Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Hidden in the Heartland podcast. This is Kels Goodman. I am here in Provo, Utah, and with me here right next to me is Mark Burris in Palmyra, New York. How are you doing today, Mark?
Good. It's Halloween.
It is Halloween. Are you going to
So
go
hopefully,
out and get some candy tonight? Are you going to dress up and
yeah, I'm gonna go right down to the Smith farm,
oh,
go trick-or-treating there and go trick-or-treating on the Hill Cumorah. So, we got
That's
it
right,
going.
because you're near the Smith farm. So, do they do
Yeah.
something at the Smith farm every year?
They don't. No,
Ah,
I mean
shucks.
they do some things around Christmas time. The Hill Cumorah, there are some things they do for the anniversary of Moroni appearing, but other than that, not
Yeah,
really. So I
yeah,
live right
that's
next to the Grandin building, and I should demand candy, but I don't think they will have any. So.
that's life in Palmyra. A lot has happened since
Demand,
Willard Bean, huh? So,
yeah, demand some good tidings. I need some
that's
good
right.
tidings.
Good tidings is all you want. So, leave us Mormons alone. So, that's all. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so, welcome this morning. We are going to talk about something fun today. And I'm actually going to be stealing a lecture. And so I apologize if I'm stealing a lecture and a little bit of extra, but I'm getting a lot of my information from a lecturer who I didn't really get permission from. So I'll probably have to try to get permission, but I doubt he would be opposed to us talking about this great topic, which is really fascinating. And that is, of course, the Brandenburg Stone. And so here we go. I'm going to switch us over to our keynote, and we're going to go ahead and just start with that. Look at that, technology at its best. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Brandenburg Stone. So this stone is got some history, and I'm going to give you what I know of it and what we know, me and Mark, what we've studied from it. And if you have any more beyond this, or you have some other information, please don't hesitate to give us some information on the comments below. Or if you think it's something fascinating that you would like to study further, um, we'll give you our references at the end so that you can do some studying on it. So this is the Brandenburg Stone is a stone that we'll go into the translation and what it said, where it was found, and kind of the background of it. First off, I want to talk about this fine gentleman. This is Dr. Lee Pennington. So Dr. Pennington is actually a historian, and I don't know if he's still teaching, but I know he taught. Um, and the information we're going to give you today, a lot of it, not all of it, but most of it is coming from a lecture that he gave at an Ancient American Preservation Society conference in 2001, and it's every October. And I've talked before about the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society, but I've accidentally called it Ancient American Preservation Society. So forgive me if I mix the two, but I think of Wayne May's magazine. And Wayne is who introduced me to this conference. And Wayne is probably the only member of the church that actually attends. I've recently seen, I think David Lindsley actually did a presentation, this last one, and I missed this last one. I really wished I could have gone, but it was cool to see another member of the church going to the conference, because honestly, in my opinion, you want real evidence of the Book of Mormon. You want real content that shows you some good things that are unbiased towards the church, or whether it's Mormon or not. This conference is got that. It's got a lot of extra things, a lot of stuff that's not necessarily related to the Book of Mormon, but you'll pull a lot of it there is a relationship to the Book of Mormon. It's not
Yeah,
spiritual whatsoever. It's all strictly archaeological and historical. So
if you ever get a chance and you're able to pick up a copy of the Ancient American magazine, that's also a really great place, because a lot of the guys that go to those conferences, they publish
that's
in
right.
Ancient American, and like you read through it and there's really amazing articles. It's kind of like a National Geographic, but not as like colorful. um
It's
but
just pure
it's
information.
really amazing to read through it, and they're all people that aren't members of the church, but every third or fourth article you'll see something, you'll be like, huh, that's interesting, that's something I read about in the text of the Book of Mormon.
That's right.
That is very interesting. So it's unfortunate that more members don't go up to this society. I'm hoping, in the future, that my schedule might be as such where I can start going to different things, because out in the area where I live, there are things that are being found and things that are being reported and artifacts in museums, and it's important that I go and see these things and
Yeah,
experience them.
that's
So
exactly right. Yeah, good call there, Mark. Because yeah, I wanted to go this year. I've gone twice, and then I've threatened to go several times, and then I don't go. I mean, one of the hardest parts about the conference is it is way up there. Like, it's not a quick flight by any means, and it is way up, kind of near it. One year it was at Marquette, Michigan, and that's when I went the first time, and that's when I met Scott Walter. And then they've moved it to a casino kind of away from Marquette, and I can't remember what city it is, but it's near there. But you would, even if you flew to, say, Chicago, or if you flew to one of the towns
like
in
Lansing,
like,
or
yeah, what, Green Bay, I think. One of the we'll have to find out, the connecting flight. You still got to drive several hours to the actual conference. So I drove there once. Can you believe it? The year I came to see Mark and filmed his interview, I actually was on my way to the conference that I went in 2018, and that was really fun. And it was really neat to be welcomed, and you see people coming with the things that they find, and there is an open and welcome kind of, thought provoking, didn't think of this kind of moment. And that is how this works. That is how it should work. Is there's no putting a stamp in, this is this and it's never going to change, and you're a heathen if you don't believe this. It doesn't work like that by any means. It's very free thinking kind of conference, and allows people to be able to present what they think and what they know, and it's really a good experience. So
and
anyway,
that and they're not necessarily like tied down by other organizations, where they're presenting what they've found and they're doing it without fear. They're not
yeah,
worried about, fitting within a box.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
it's really good stuff. I mean, I'm sure that when you went up there, there were some things that you saw that might have been a little bit weird, but that's
yeah.
okay. You
It's totally
know,
fine. Yeah, and
I
go up and
mean,
talk to him afterwards. And
people
so
come to different conclusions. I know there are whole shows about, aliens in archaeology, so
yeah,
there's things that are out there, but uh,
yeah,
these societies are refreshing because they're not tied down. Some of
yeah,
the best museums and artifacts are by little historic societies, that are dedicated to preserving and dedicated to showing these amazing things, to people.
yeah.
It's not necessarily the big museums and the big universities. It's these little tiny, these groups that are just dedicated to do what they're doing.
That's
So
right. Some of the best museums are the ones that are like not. You're right. Not tied down to a state or
yeah.
anything like that. Who's that? Tony Sanders in out in Nauvoo. We visited Tony Sanders a number of years back. He has his own collection of, had like about probably 5,000 arrowheads and tons of stuff. And that's where we found the ancient palm tree that was petrified, which was, and he found it in Iowa, which was kind of like, oh my goodness. So you just, and you kind of, and admittedly, you end up having to draw your own conclusion, and that's fine. That's totally fine. So, so what I want to do is kind of go into Dr. Lee Pennington. So he's president of the Ancient Kentucky Historical Association. And in that case, if you look it up, Kentucky is spelled with a K-E, not K-Y. So that's the native spelling. That's the original spelling of Kentucky. And Lee actually has an active Facebook page. So you can look at him on there and look him up, and you can see the stuff that he's done. And so, which is pretty cool. And I think you would get a lot out of it. So Brandenburg, what I want to do is, Brandenburg is just kind of give you a location. So Kentucky, you see the map on the left, Kentucky has, it's a real heart. They call it the heart of the Ohio River Valley, because many rivers go right through Kentucky. I think most of the main highway, river highways will go right through Kentucky. The Ohio River, the Mississippi River, the Missouri River. I'm sure I'm missing a few, but there's numerous rivers that all come through Kentucky. So it's a very heavy place full of ancient highways, obviously river highways. And Brandenburg is a little town that's on the top. So you can see a little map in the middle, and you can kind of see that river is a border, and Brandenburg is right by that river. And so it's a place where a lot of artifacts have been found. So almost at the very top of the state to the right is that Ohio River, where Brandenburg, and supposedly the stone was found kind of near there. In fact, the stone wasn't really found necessarily right in Brandenburg, but it was right off a little bit to a little town called Battletown, or Battleton is how they pronounce it.
But people would recognize Brandenburg, so that's
Correct.
why they called it the Brandenburg Stone. It's like naming some little podunk town, that no one knows. They try to find the nearest,
yeah, and they can't find
larger
it.
populace.
So that's right. So Brandenburg is the one that has the city and the library and everything. And so now here's who found the stone. There's not many photos of this gentleman, but and I actually stole this again from Lee Pennington, these images. So this is Craig Crecelius, and the stone was actually on his property. And there's a big wall that's near right near his property, and the stone fell. Supposedly, that's the theory, is that the stone was possibly once on the wall and fell and landed on his property. And he found it way back in 1912. So it's over 100 years ago that he actually found it. And what he would do is he had to break it in several pieces in order to transport it. Now, one thing to remember, earlier 1800s, early 1900s, people didn't take very good care of artifacts. They were terrible at it, and because they were farmers, or they were, that they were there for business. They weren't there to care about, something left on the side of the road. They were there to take care of themselves. But this was one of those moments where this gentleman found it important to keep, even though he still broke it in half just so he could transport it. But that's fine. That's the way he had to deal with it. So he did that, and he took the stone, and he saw the carvings on the stone. And so he felt it to be somewhat important. And so he actually took it to a lot of places. He took it to county fairs, and and he took it to a lot of places in an effort to find out what was it, because he had no idea. And he really had no skin in the game, except he just was very curious. What is that writing? What is the carvings? And so he would showcase it, but nobody would ever really was interested in it for a long time, for a good 40, 50 years or so, because he found it early on while he was there. So he took it to many places to try to get, in fact, one geologist, and that's this letter that you see next to this picture. One geologist actually said that the lines on there, the inscriptions, were actually remains of a vertebrae of a Paleolithic fish.
Fish, yeah.
So, and that's almost comical because, when you see the handwriting, the writing on it, the carving, it does, and we'll look at it. We'll get another picture of it here in a minute.
And the amount of effort that he took to haul this thing around, like later on in the story, when he kind of volunteers the stone up to someone else to be able to put it in the library, the guy didn't know how to haul it. Like it was too big. So, he's hauling it around everywhere. You can tell that he genuinely wants to know what it is. It's not like he went out, found a stone, decided to carve something crazy on it, to get name and fame. He had something and he really, really wanted to know what it was.
Yeah.
And he's just hauling it around everywhere, showing it off to people, and people are just like, oh, it's just the backbone of a fish.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of funny. So this letter is this this geologist's final, even though I guess he admitted later this geologist that
he knew nothing of
what Paleolithic fish would be like, and so it's all he had. And it's funny how I understand that archaeologists, geologists, whoever, whatever ists tell you, the truth of things. They're trying to be careful, obviously, to not open a Pandora's box of, because then you can be with ridicule. And that's one thing that Lee Pennington, kind of preached in his speech, was that too many times, and I featured this in one of my episodes of Hidden in the Heartland. Too many times, an average person will find something on their land back in the 1800s and 1900s, and they don't know what to do with it. And then, because an archaeologist was not there to find it with them, they can only go off of their word, which is understandable. But it doesn't mean you shun the person for saying where they found it and where it was. And so there almost seems to be, you hear that story quite often of an individual who's not who has letters behind his name, and who does not have letters behind his name, and they find something, and then they say, look, I found this. Then they're automatically chastised, or they're automatically put in the kooky camp, and so
and also something to remember is that archaeology is not it's not a super, super old profession.
No.
1912, there, back in the 1800s, it was, if you found something and you could sell it, you sold it, or you kept it in your basement. There just weren't archaeologists running around.
Yeah.
It just, preservation societies were starting. The Smithsonian was starting. They started sending people out and looking at the Mississippi Valley in Western New York. But archaeology, even in the early 1900s, was a very, very new kind of thing.
Very new. I mean, I think Thomas Jefferson was sort of the father of, modern archaeology, and you still did things fairly crude back then. And I'm sure as the years have gone on, we've gotten a little more exact. And because of that, and that is why Mr. Crecelius went ahead and just stuck the stone in that shed right over his shoulder in this picture. That's why I got this picture instead of the other. There's a few others of them, to show that that's the shed that housed the stone for many years, and for 40 years, they say. So anyway, so obtaining the stone. So here's another image of the stone, and this is kind of this view you see below is where they say it was found. And so here's some information on that. There's a gentleman named John Whitfield from Brandenburg, or at least I think he was from Brandenburg. He was a trustee of the Brandenburg Library, and he built a relationship with Mr. Crecelius. And after many visits with him, he would go to him and say, "Hey, can we put the stone in the Brandenburg Library?" And so for many years, he would just go and build a relationship with him, and then eventually, one day he did obtain the stone. He was able to get it, and so John Whitfield took it over to the library. Stone made it to the library. And then by that time is when our friend Lee Pennington, who's giving this presentation, that's what makes Lee Pennington a little more of an authority, I believe, on the stone, is that he actually knew a lot of these people and he worked with the stone himself. And so he said by the time Lee Pennington had made it to the library, he saw when he went to see it at this library, he actually saw them using the stone as a footstool. Like it wasn't protected in anything. It was sitting under a window. And he
People
said
didn't
that
even
they would like
realize
step on it, and it wasn't that important to the library, even though they worked hard to get it, but they still just kind of,
I doubt they even had like a plaque that said what it was. I think people
Yeah.
just thought that, oh, it's like it's just a little step to open and close a window or whatever. So it
Yeah, that's just kind of wild. And so and then the other thing is that Lee Pennington talks about a guy named William Burrell who and a lot of these people have passed on. They've all passed away that he's talked about, except for Lee Pennington himself, obviously. And he says that he met a guy named William Burrell who actually, when he was 8 years old, Mr. Crecelius told him where the exact spot was of the stone. And so this picture that you see here is kind of the location where he said the stone was. Now, I have another picture. I didn't put it up, but it was a picture of William Burrell showing him where the stone was. So it was good that Lee actually made a record of that, of being able to do that. But he was already 80 years old when he told him about it, and then he has obviously since passed away. But it was good that Lee had an interest in it to help preserve the information, the trail, because that's very important whenever you talk about artifacts. You always want to know the trail of where it was, who was there, who saw it, and then where it sits, eventually. So that was kind of fascinating. And then displaying the stone. So they ended up moving the stone to a place called Fallsville, Ohio, which is right over the border. And this is the Fallsville, Ohio Interpretive Center. And it's on the border of Kentucky and Ohio. Lee and his association moved like heaven and earth just to get it there. They did all kinds of stuff to try to get it. Like it was almost sort of like trying to get a teenager to do their homework, and where they would go to the center and they would say, "Hey, here's the stone. It's very important." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we don't have a place to display it." And so they went and hurried and built a display, and they took it over to the Ohio interpretive center, and they said, well, we need a way to transport it. And so Lee and his group worked hard to get a way to get it transported, because it's big. It's kind of a big stone. And it was just one excuse after another. And finally, the Fallsville, Ohio Center displayed it. And they had actually, it was sad because one historian at the center was skeptical of it, and he said it wasn't real history. And so there's always a lot of like, we don't know. And it goes back to that, well, we weren't there when we found it kind of mentality. And so, who are we to believe? But it doesn't honestly matter, because it's still a piece of history. It's like the Kinderhook plates. The Kinderhook plates is still up for debate on whether the one Kinderhook plate is real or not, but it's still a part of history and still needs to be preserved. And so that even whether it's ancient history or whether it's recent history, it's still a piece of history. So anyways,
it's all a matter of if it's history you like or not,
exactly, whether it's history you agree with or whether you like it or not. That's right. And sometimes it's so when it got there, it finally got a really good reception. In fact, he was saying that they finally had a day where they celebrated the stone, and then they had this crowd come. This was in 1999. So they eventually got it in there in display, and they had even an article in the AP write up about it. That's what you see in this slide here. And then this is an actual picture down there of people being interested in it, and actually had a crowd that showed up that they usually don't have. And so, which is really fascinating. So that was really good for them
Didn't
and the
people
stone.
pay to see it as well?
Yeah,
Or was that
they actually
later?
paid $5
They
to
paid
go.
$5, yeah.
Yeah, so for an industry that struggles, especially in places like Ohio, where doing artifacting is usually something where the state ends up having to finance it. It was nice to see some public interest in something like this. So it gives a little story about Crecelius and all of that. And Lee Pennington was there, so he was able to speak, and the other guys spoke. And we're going to talk about a few of these people here in just a minute. The stone eventually was removed, and it moved to several different places. It actually moved to Charlestown, Indiana Library in Clark County. And what's interesting about that, Clark County, and we're gonna save some of that for another time, because we're gonna talk a little bit about Prince Madoc. And somebody wrote a book, which I'll show you at the end, called Prince Madoc, Founder of Clark County. And so I haven't read the book, so I'm kind of curious as to what that means. And for those of you who've never heard of Prince Madoc, we are going to talk about Prince Madoc in a future episode while we gather the information. But Prince Madoc is somebody who supposedly came to America around in the 500s, and so which is immediately after Book of Mormon time. And while it's not Book of Mormon time, we think it's important because it touches that time frame. So we're gonna go into that another time. But anyway, so Charlestown, Indiana, that's where it ended up. And then finally, the Brandenburg got a new library. And so that's where the stone is today. So you could actually go visit Brandenburg and go visit their new library there. I think it's Meade County Library. I think that's what it's called. I forgot to write that down. And there's the stone. So there it is in its pieces. But anyway, so now the real question is, what is the stone? And so the translation of it. And so that we're going to kind of go and take a minute and kind of go into that. And what do we think it is?
So real quick question.
Yeah.
Was there more than just the stone in the area, or was that just the only thing that, showed that there might have been civilization there?
Well, there's a wall. There's the big wall. And there were probably other things, but I don't have a record of it here in my notes. But the wall was one thing where the theory was that the wall might have been made by man, or it might have been used at one period. That's where we think the stone may have fallen from that wall into Mr.
Said it was a pretty
Crecelius's.
significantly high wall, wasn't it? Like it
Yeah. Oh
was.
yeah. It was like uh, what maybe a couple hundred feet, I think. I forgot the number. I forgot to write that down.
They also had mentioned that there were bones there.
Yeah. Oh, I
Um,
didn't
but
catch the bones. So
so they there were just bones strewn everywhere. So he went into quite a bit of the Native American, the tribal
oh yeah.
history, talking about the different people that were in the area, that there were Native Americans that looked differently than the other Native Americans. They also talked about burials where there were breastplates that
Oh yeah.
had symbols on them. Unfortunately, there was a flood in the area, and in his presentation, he shows kind of what happened with the flood, and it kind of leveled the area out, and a lot of the other supportive items to that there was civilization there were wiped out.
So would that
So
be
it,
the stuff that's connected to Prince Madoc that
yeah,
they connect to? Oh, definitely, definitely.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
it's
that's
a really really interesting, like this is not just like a stone that was found, but there were lots of other items that were found, and you tie that in with what the Native American, what their oral history was, and it's a pretty interesting presentation.
yeah.
I'm hoping that we can kind of convince these guys to be able to put some of these presentations on YouTube, because I you can't
Yeah,
find anything like it online. These
yeah.
guys have done this research, and they've really dedicated good portions of their lives to.
Well, yeah, especially like Lee. Yeah. I mean, it's
And
Lee is I actually have to buy my presentations on DVD, and I'll probably have to again this year. And Lee's on every one of them, and every year. And so uh and the stuff that you're talking about, Mark, uh one of the theories of it, which like I said, we'll go into another episode when we go into Prince Madoc, is the theory of the Welsh uh influence that came into America. And they say that one of the theories is that the Mandan tribe is part Welsh, that it has a Welsh background with fair skinned people, and that the Welsh may have had some influence, according to their history. And one of those who actually uh, will comment on that is a guy named Alan Wilson. And there's some great material from Alan Wilson on Prince Madoc and the Welsh influence in America. He himself is actually a Welsh scholar. And of course, the Welsh from what I understand, the Welsh and the English don't get along a lot very well.
hmm,
But what do I know? So, um, and so, yeah, so he actually had this stone translated. And so here it is. And sorry, our cute faces are covering a little bit of the text, but this is one translation of the stone. There are others, but this is what I'm going to talk about today. Is what they think is sort of a Welsh conversion. And so, if you were to read this, it says, "Toward strength, to uh, parentheses, to promote unity, divide the land, we are spread over purely or justly between of spring and wisdom." So obviously, it's the theory is a lot like the Bat Creek stone. It's a continuation of some other text, but it kind of broke off and it stopped. What this means, we don't really know. But the language that they say it could be multiple things, and I've seen other presentations from people where they give many different types of languages that could almost fit into this. But the language that Lee Pennington thinks it is Colbran. And so Colbran is an interesting language that, I rarely have heard of until Lee talked about it. And so they say that Colbran actually is compared to Greek. So you can find a lot of connections with Greek. And there's probably others. There's probably a Phoenician language that's like this. There's probably, I can't think of the others right off the top of my head, but definitely interesting. One of the theories, if you were to look up Colbran today on, say, Wikipedia, okay, they'll tell you that Colbran was believed to be the language that was invented by a guy named Ilo Morgan or Edward Williams. I guess he went by two names from the 1700s. They'll say that this is a later translation, that this is a later type of language that he actually created from Wales. And so that's why they say there's a Wales influence to this text. But Lee actually says that he thinks Colbran was as early as 490, and that he found evidence of Colbran being used as around 490. And I don't have the evidence here to show you, but he did have some text that he showed that something says, oh, that's Colbran from 490. So whether Ilo Morgan created this from scratch, or whether he actually pulled it from Greek, from an older text, we don't know. But there are so many texts that look like this. There are so many older texts that can come across in different ways. For Lee, it's Colbran, and so that's what he's going to go after. But what I'm going to show you is going to be pretty interesting about the use of Colbran. So here is Lee's other texts that he says Colbran has translated into. Okay. The Back Creek Stone. So now we all look at the Back Creek Stone as Paleo-Hebrew, right? It's that story where this stone was found in the 1800s, housed in the Smithsonian, and it was, it was shown in one way, and they called it, Cherokee, and then later Cyrus, I can't remember who it is, Cyrus Gordon, I think, came in and flipped it and said, no, it's Hebrew, and found out that it's actually Paleo-Hebrew. But Lee will come in and say that he thinks that this could possibly be Colbran. If it's Colbran, here is the translation of this stone. You ready for this? Madoc, the ruler, distinctly thou art. So let that sink in for a moment. What does that mean? And Madoc is obviously possibly referring to this Prince Madoc. Like I said, we're going to talk about it at a future time. But it's like, where do they get that from? That's just fascinating. I like I said, I'm only reporting it. I'm not
If
saying
it's
fascinating.
if Colbran is Welsh, I know that a lot of like ancient Irish matches with Hebrew. So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna find that even anciently languages were kind of shared.
Yeah.
And
No, I
writing was
agree.
shared. And maybe this might have been like the Reformed Egyptian of the time, where it's like, hey, this is easy to carve on stone, so this is what we're gonna, I mean, it might have been an easier language. So there might have been languages that were easier to write. on scrolls or parchment, and there might have been ones that were easier to carve on stones.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
know, but
It's hard to tell,
so
but
yeah.
that's just sort of fascinating. And then let's go to the Grave Creek Stone. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the Grave Creek Stone, and I will have more information on some of these languages and what they think the Grave Creek Stone is. This is the only photo of the Grave Creek Stone, and we'll go into that. That's actually our discussion next week. But here's the translation of the Grave Creek Stone. And again, we've covered our beautiful faces over some of the text. I apologize. It says, wind gust, welcome the crossing over, swiftly turning high lord, distinctly thou art. Sea voyage together, welcome hand to me in bow or rainbow. And I miswrote that. I wrote rainbow, but it's rainbow to me. And so that's a misspelling on my part. But so somehow the word distinctly has been used numerous times now in these. So that's a word that they love to use.
If anybody knows anything about that, let us know. But
Yeah,
that's
this
like
is
adding emphasis or what it really means. I'd be interested to know.
yeah,
So
I would be too. So, but I just think that that's just fascinating that. But this is Alan Wilson who did this translation. So Alan Wilson, and we're going to talk about Alan Wilson more when we go into Prince Madoc, because I've got some more content that I'll be giving to you, Mark, too, to go over. But Alan Wilson is who Lee Pennington had, whether Lee asked him to or somebody asked him to, who actually did the translation utilizing Colburn, and he translated the Back Creek, retranslated the Back Creek Stone, the Grave Creek Stone, and other stones. He did like about, I don't know, I think like about 50 or so other items that have had writing on it, and he's done the Colburn translation, and they've kind of changed quite a bit.
and and part of I think reading and studying these sorts of things is you kind of have to be open to, hey, maybe it wasn't Paleo Hebrew.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a different language. And I think we have to be okay with that. It's like the Iztapa stone that they found in Central America that everybody says, oh, it's the tree of life, the tree of life, the tree of life. And the more that they look at it and the more that the deeper we've dug into it, it shows the afterlife, of that civilization. Yeah, there are some things in there that, hey, there's a tree. Hey, there's this. But
yeah.
I think you have to be open and you can't just be like, oh, well, it has to be because
Yeah,
it
it's
fits
this
with what
way,
I
and
want
that's
it to
how it
be.
is. Yeah, you've
Yeah,
got to
it fits with
be.
what I want it to be. I can, right now, I can say, well, it could be these two options. You know, I'm uh, I'm kind of interested in the Prince Madoc thing, so I'm okay. Like
Yeah,
I'm interested that other people, were brought here to be preserved. They were brought to the promised land. And even if it doesn't fit within the Book of Mormon time frame, if it's a little bit after,
it's
it's
still
it's
important
something
because
that it's compelling to me,
yeah,
like
it touches that time frame. It was like when we talked about what's it, Saint Brendan. And it's like, yeah, Saint Brendan is not Book of Mormon time frame, but it sure touches it. It's sure
yeah.
very close to it, to where it's
And they
what
they
what did he
they
know?
they
What did he
all
see?
yeah, and these different groups of people, it feels like they were brought here to be preserved. you
Yeah,
know it feels like they weren't coming over here to find gold and glory. Saint Brendan, he's coming, and perhaps he's bringing record, but he's trying to find the Garden of Eden. You have Prince Madoc, where there's evidence of a catastrophic event that happened in the northern part of the British Isles, where you know it was saving lives, so that posterity could happen. So they're really interesting, compelling stories, and it actually, to me, it adds to the text of the Book of Mormon. The people were brought here,
yeah,
um, and
and
there
they
were
can
there
make it.
was There was
Yeah.
reasons, and it wasn't gold and glory. It was, it was other reasons. So
That was what, yeah, Prince made. I'm sorry, Brendan did it, and we're going to learn more about Prince Madoc's, reasoning for coming here, and it'll be fascinating. So here's some resources for you guys. Actually, all of these are available either on Amazon or eBay. You can find now the Ancient Kentucky um, Historian Historical Society. That's definitely another society that's very fascinating. Is very active in finding stuff. Like they have a Facebook page as well, and this book you can actually buy. The Ancient Kentucky Inscriptions you can buy from the Ancient Kentucky Historical Association, and there's really good content there. The book in the middle, the Brandenburg Stone, is actually very fair. Beverly Furnival, I think that's how you'd pronounce it. From what I understand, I have not read it yet, but from what I understand, it's very fair. It doesn't say it's a genuine thing, and it doesn't say it's not either. It's very fair from what I understand. And then this interesting book here, Dana Olson wrote Prince Madoc, founder of Clark County, Indiana. I can't wait to dive into that. I'm very curious as to what that book tells us.
It's interesting to me because like that one museum they actually had like a statue of Prince Madoc.
Yeah, I know, right?
And they were okay with it for a while, and then some people decide, well, that's not the direction we're
It's not
going in,
real
so
history.
we're
Yeah,
gonna get rid of the stone, and we're gonna get rid of him. And let's say they do find that it is real history.
yeah,
Are they going to replace him? Probably not. I mean, and that's one of the issues, is that you have certain people that decide, they say yes or they say no, instead of letting people look at it and decide, like look at the evidence and decide for yourself.
yeah. I
We have
mean,
people that are out there that are like, I'm going to decide for you because you can't.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
the Fallsville, Ohio Center totally had the Prince Madoc. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, they did have a Prince
Yeah,
Madoc
he's like in the basement
stand
now,
there.
like,
Yeah, now
you
he's in
know.
the basement and
They said
rotting.
we only have real history in this museum, and I'm sure that it's probably the curator, and that is a curator's job. Of course it is.
Yeah, obviously. And you got
Um,
so much space, I'm sure. So,
but I mean, one of the problems that you have is you start whitewashing things, and you hamper people's desire to, like, if I saw that, I'd be like, hey, I want to learn more about that. Let me learn about it. But honestly, I knew nothing about the Brandenburg Stone
yeah,
before you sent me the videos to watch, and it's really interesting and it's compelling. It's something I want to learn more about, and
yeah.
that should be what that should be what a museum does. It should be to inspire people to learn more and decide for themselves, not to decide for you. So
Yeah, that's right.
that's my 2 cents.
Hence the reason for Hidden in the Heartland. And that's what we try to do here is we try to just present the content, give it to you, and let you decide. We're not here for you to worship us or nothing. We're just here to just try to bring some content out for each of us to study. Go ahead and comment on any of the things, and if you like this channel, go ahead and subscribe. Like this episode, share it. We're on Facebook as well, and so go ahead and leave us a comment. And also, we're trying to make another season 3 of full episodes, fully produced episodes. Just to kind of remind you, these are not what we're doing today. Is not an episode of the normal Hidden in the Heartland. This is just the podcast to keep the information going and to keep it alive. We'll eventually need to produce some nice stuff. We'd like to sit down with Lee Pennington and do a full interview with him. And we'd like to go to these places and go see them and record and then even do reenactments. I would love to reenact Craig Crecelius finding the stone, and with actors and everything, so that people can understand it and get it clear, just like we've done in the past with Hidden in the Heartland. If you haven't watched our earlier episodes, scroll to the earlier posts on YouTube, and you'll see our older videos that we've produced, and they appeared on television here in Utah, and then online. So we want you to, if you're able to help us, we do have a what do we call it? I was going to say give, send, go. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not whatever the other one was, but it's the one that it's the financial, the thing that they. I guess I'm gonna have to edit this because I'm blowing it. Darn it! But it's a give, send, go. It's our program that we use to raise money, and we've raised some, but we need more to be able to reach a goal to be able to get producing. So anyway, we're excited that you joined us today here on Hidden in the Heartland, and we ask that you subscribe, check us out, and do some of your own research on from those from the resources that we gave you, because they're really fascinating. And if you can do your own, you can share it. And then we'd love to, we're going to start having guests on soon. So we're hoping that this will happen. We're also going to be, we're going to have a few more episodes this year, and then we're going to take a little break throughout December. And then when the new year hits, we're going to start with a whole bunch of new content that we're hoping to present to you. So thank you for joining us here on Hidden in the Heartland, and we look forward to seeing you next week.